another talent parade and radio review. And now here is our master of ceremonies.
Now, the Christopher Gabriel program on News Talk 580, 1059 KMJ, and streaming at KMJNow.com.
This is KMJ.
This is your 50,000-watt News Talk leader from Sacramento to the Grapevine to the Central Coast, 580, 1059 KMJ. It is the Christopher Gabriel program for the insiders. You know who you are. It's the CGP. Great program this week. What do I always tell you? When we only have two guests, that means they're important, and they are. Nick Shager from the Daily Beast, he's going to be joining us a little bit later. But right now, this gentleman, Mark Schipper, I have wanted him on for the longest time. He's a writer. He's a filmmaker. He's the creative force behind Fifth Down CFB. It is his own personal American Odyssey. He's going to explain it. Mark joins me from the greatest city on the planet, Chicago, right now. Mark, good morning to you.
Christopher, how are you doing today? Glad to connect with you.
Man, I'm doing great. Even greater that we're getting you on right now. And I talked about Fifth Down CFB, and you have been on this cool journey. Explain what this project is.
Yeah, Fifth Down College Football. That's really just the name for a book project of mine. So it's kind of a setup to front for this project, which ends in a book. So my purpose was essentially to tell the story of college football in this country. My premise is it's inseparable from American history and culture in a unique way, which is a worthy subject on its own. And also, I started saying this in 2020. This project really got rolling in 2021. I said, we're entering a revolutionary period, and the game's going down its old traditional roads for a final time, and that is proven to be totally true and maybe even to a more extreme extent than I thought it would be. So I'm putting together the book on that story. I traveled all over the country. I went to many of this sport's best rivalry games, spent a weekend there, full day at the ballpark. And I'm going to put this sport into context with the American story. And I think people who love history, travel books, college football are really going to enjoy the ride.
Well, I'll be getting an autographed copy from you when it comes out, because you're doing what I think so many millions of college football fans would love to do. As a media guy, I've had the privilege of being able to cover games in venues all over the place. You've been to a ton. I love the pictures. Are there any that just immediately jump out in terms of not just the venue, but the environment on game day? Because, I mean, you've been everywhere.
Right. Yeah. Well, your beloved Tennessee Volunteers is a fantastic environment. I was in Knoxville for third Saturday in October 2022. Tennessee snapped a long losing streak. A field storming of monumental proportions took place. That atmosphere stands out. I was at so many of the sport's best games. It's really like, we're talking about the top tier environments. USC, Notre Dame, Michigan, Ohio State, the world's largest outdoor cocktail party between Florida, Georgia, Jacksonville, the Red River Shootout, Texas, Oklahoma. So all of these games, Army, Navy, this is like showcasing the absolute best of college football. So really, all of these atmospheres were superb.
I love it. Sometime when I come back to the Midwest, you and I need to sit down over at Giordano's Pizza or wherever you want to go and talk about this, because all those games you've mentioned, I've been to every one of them except for the Florida-Georgia game. I've been to Florida and I've been to Georgia, but not to Jacksonville. And you're right. You nailed some fantastic games. College football fans, I tell them all the time, Mark, find yourself, a weekend and go to a different rivalry game every year. I mean, people think I'm kidding when I tell them the Civil War, the Oregon State game, the Apple Cup. I hope it continues. Washington State. These are great games and well worth people's time. We're talking with Mark Schipper. He's a writer, filmmaker, and he's the creative force behind Fifth Down College Football, his own American Odyssey. Let's just talk about conference realignment for a moment. What's your view? Is it wrecking, or has it wrecked college football? And if it's on the road to that, which you were just talking about, is there a road back, Mark?
Yeah, well, it's a revolutionary period, like I said, and I thought there would be some serious realignment going on. I think the West Coast schools joining the Big Ten was far more extreme than anybody really imagined. Is it wrecking the sport? In certain ways it is, but I don't think we know yet if this damage is permanent or can be repaired, which is part of your question. I do think over the next several years, possibly decade, maybe even a little longer, we're going to get a upper echelon of the sport, of the very top tier teams. And I think if that does happen, I think it will reorganize itself on more geographically sane lines with sort of regions, and a little bit like the old conference concept, which came about organically. You know, when we started playing this game, we traveled by train and by much slower methods. And so conferences needed to be geographically close because that was the only real way you could do it for a reasonable price and in a reasonable time frame. So, you know, we're talking about rivalries. This sport is built on rivalries, and I think when you get conference realignment that destroys any number of these organic, ancient rivalries, you're damaging the sport. So we're mid-revolution. It's a huge mess right now, but I'm optimistic that we can repair it and get it back into a better condition.
Yeah, you know, I love that you mentioned traveling by train, because the game that comes to mind, I wasn't there, and neither were you, but the game that comes to mind that really started this cross-country trend was the 1927 USC Notre Dame game. You know, the coaches' wives, right? They met at some function, and USC traveled by train to Chicago to Soldier Field. There was something like, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, something like 128,000 people at the old Soldier Field.
Yeah, it was like, I think their first two games there were about 120,000 each. It was just totally maxed out. Yeah, the USC Notre Dame was the first real consistent intersectional rivalry, particularly at that distance. Notre Dame traveled a lot to the East Coast, but South Bend, Indiana to the East Coast is it's a trip, but it's not that far of a trip. Crossing the Continental Divide back and forth was a totally different thing. So, yeah, and Notre Dame USC was considered totally unique to the sport. It was the only rivalry of that distance in the game. And now, you know, we've got multiple conference games that travel at least that far, if not quite the other half of the country further. So it's changed a lot. My guest is Mark Schipper. He's a writer, filmmaker, and the force behind Fifth Down College Football. Just a really talented guy. Let's talk about UCLA. We've got about 3 minutes in this opening segment. I'm glad that we have you for a couple of segments. I'm a Pac-12 alum, and I look at UCLA, and I immediately think, right now, I think about my friend in Knoxville, Mark Nagy, longtime media guy there. He wrote a book called The Decade of Dysfunction, and it was a decade straight from hell for Tennessee football. One coach after another, and potential scandal, and just things just went out the window, and Tennessee was way off the radar. It feels to me, and yeah, full disclosure, I'm a USC guy, but objectively, Mark, it seems to me that UCLA is not just in a downward spiral. They're in a full-blown black hole right now. I don't know how they get out of it. What is your take with UCLA? How long is it going to take them to get out of this? Is Tim Schipper the guy? Take this wherever you want. Yeah, well, the good news is, particularly in this environment, the NIL transfer portal era, it can be turned around instantaneously if you hire the right coach. That's not an easy thing to do, but you have to hire the right guy. So that's UCLA's road out. The bad news for UCLA is it has a dysfunctional athletic department, which is what led to the sort of catastrophic depths of this situation. And it doesn't appear right now that AD is going to be immediately replaced. They had a strange situation. An interim chancellor signed him to a contract. He's got a $7 million buyout at this point, the full value of his contract, which is essentially unheard of for an athletic director. But UCLA's kind of stuck with him at this point. So they brought in a committee to sort of pick out the next coach over his head. And if that committee does its job and they get the right guy in, well, you know, to use a current example, Curt Cignetti at Indiana. Indiana has the worst football program in the history of the Big Ten. They're now working on back-to-back playoff appearances with a chance to play for a national title. So that's the era we're in. A school with no football tradition can flip itself overnight. UCLA, a program and a school with a significant football tradition over the history of this sport, can certainly do it, but you got to get the right people in place. Yeah, you're talking about Martin Drummond, the athletic director at UCLA. A couple of days ago, you had a van going through Westwood that was loudly calling for his job. Things are definitely or have unraveled there. You're absolutely right.
Thankfully, we have another segment with our guy, Mark Schipper, just a talented and elite college football mind. You just don't go anywhere. We're going to be talking about Nebraska. We're going to be talking about Billy Napier. And does college football need a commissioner? There's a lot of thoughts about that. We'll see what Mark says. This is the CGP on News Talk 580, 1059 KMJ.
This is the Christopher Gabriel Program on News Talk 580, 1059 KMJ, and streaming at KMJNow.com.
This is KMJ.
Continuing our conversation with elite college football writer, filmmaker, and the force behind Fifth Down College Football. He is Mark Schipper. I want to talk about Nebraska. You know, Nebraska and Tennessee went into the proverbial toilet at about the same time. And with both schools, you had two schools with great tradition, great everything. Tennessee has come out of that. Nebraska, for all intents and purposes, has not, even though they still sell out every game at Memorial Stadium in Lincoln. I mean, it's a great environment. You've been there, one of the great environments in college football. How long is it going to be before? I mean, it seems like they've got the right guy, Mark.
Yeah, it's a compelling question. I think anybody who's watched college football for any amount of time wonders when Nebraska, or if Nebraska is coming back. Because from about 1962, when Bob Devaney got there, through the early 2000s, they were one of college football's absolute elite tier programs. And to watch them fall off like they have, I mean, just to fall off a cliff, 7 consecutive losing seasons, bottom of the Big Ten kind of stuff. Incredible to see. Like everywhere else, it's going to be the right coach and getting the right players into the program. I think the adjustment for Nebraska from the sort of shallow waters of the Big 8 to the depths of the Big 10 has been difficult for them. And I think their entire program is facing geographically a different direction. In the Big 8, they pointed south towards Oklahoma. And when the Big 12 into Texas, and they had recruiting grounds down there, they played a coherent option system. They had the strength training, innovative program before its time. They had a lot of things going for them. You know, they now face towards the upper Midwest. They recruit different areas, and they don't have that near-term heritage to draw on, or Tom Osborne, who coached there for nearly 3 decades and had such an established identity and a bunch of other details that are important to running a program. So Nebraska's got to get the right guy and recruit the right kids, and they just they haven't been able to reestablish an identity.
No, you're absolutely right. That's very well said. We're talking with Mark Schipper. You pulled out a quote on your X, and by the way, folks, you should be following Mark on X, and you can do that by simply following him at Fifth Down CFB. Fifth Down CFB. He has a great. He has a great X. Somebody here in our newsroom said he always seems angry. I said, no, he's not. He's not angry. I said he's concerned. He's concerned about the sport. There's a difference. He's a great follow, folks. I strongly suggest following Mark. Listen, you on your X page, you pulled out a quote from legendary SC coach John McKay, and the quote goes as follows: "If you see a team with an undefeated record, check their schedule." Close quote. And I love that quote. Of course, John McKay won 4 national championships there. I have a lot of thoughts about scheduling, but I want to hear yours. Mine starts with this, Mark. Stop scheduling non-conference games when you are Power 4 teams, non-conference games that are clear and obvious bye games, and give us legitimate college football matchups of teams at the upper tier playing teams at the upper tier.
Yeah, the sport needs to get back to that. I was a kid in the mid-'90s, late '90s, and I now know I was very fortunate to experience traditional college football, meaning pre-BCS. They called it bowls and polls. You played in a bowl game, and the next day they took a vote, ranked people in the poll, and you won a national title, or you split a national title, and we moved on to the next season. In that era, the way you won national titles is you had to build a narrative around your season, and the way you built a narrative was by playing good football teams. Sometimes you lost a game, sometimes you went undefeated, sometimes something else happened, but the whole point was at the end of the year, you had to look back and be able to say, we played these good teams, and this is how we did against them, and here's our case for our ranking. ironically, the TV ratings weren't that big of a consideration then. It was almost a pride thing. It was a culture thing. It was how the sport was played. But I remember in those days, a school like UCLA or Tennessee, they would play all the time. And then UCLA would go play Michigan the next week, and Tennessee would play Colorado. Mm-hmm. And all these teams would play multiple peer-to-peer games in the non-conference. They would be willing to take that risk. The BCS kind of destroyed that. The CFP ruined it a little further, the 4-team CFP. But I think we may be headed back that direction with the new expanded playoff, because you're going to really have to make your case to make the field, and to do that, you need a better schedule.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I'm of that same era. I'm a little older than you. And in 1979 is a great example. I had to go back to that. I'm dating myself, but you had a year where Alabama wins the AP poll national championship. USC wins the UPI. It was the UPI poll. That same year, USC went to Alabama at Legion Field and played Bama there and destroyed them. But USC had a tie during the year, and the bottom line is the polls were split, and everybody argued and debated. But there was kind of a joy of that, right? It was kind of a charming thing when everybody would debate and argue and scream and yell about that. And that's your bowls and polls. That's what you're talking about. Well, let's switch from that and let's go to Gainesville, Florida. I'm going to talk about Billy Napier. Tell me this or riddle me this, Mark. How is Sam Pittman at Arkansas out of a job? Billy Napier is not.
Yeah, it's because Billy Napier is right on the threshold. Well, he keeps showing promise and keeping the program right on the threshold of what looks like a breakthrough. He recruits pretty well. Last year against a very difficult schedule, Florida won far more games than anybody thought they were going to win, and had a quarterback in place that looked like was going to allow them to break through. This year, that quarterback was hurt for a lot of the offseason, has missed a lot of reps. I'm talking about DJ
Lagway. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And he has not looked like himself this year at all, and it has hurt Florida big time. So the thing with Napier is he says the right things, he does the right things, it appears, and the team is close, but they're just not quite breaking through. But I think we may have already passed the point where it's too late for Napier, and they're just waiting for the right time to make the move, barring an absolute miraculous turnaround this season.
I'm just going to tell you right now, I probably don't need to tell you the history of this series, but Tennessee is going to be going into Florida and into Gainesville, the Swamp, to play. And I am telling you right now, no matter how bad Florida is playing, and all the Tennessee fans listening to me know where I'm going with this, Florida is going to look like the greatest team in the history of college football when Tennessee shows up. It happens every other year when the Vols go to Gainesville. They turn into a Pop Warner team, and Florida just does things. Weird things happen there, Mark. And so I'm already expecting that. They are on paper. There's no reason Florida should beat Tennessee this year. I don't care if they play the game there, in Knoxville, or in Bolivia. But I'm just telling you that you mark my words, they're going to play great that night. All right, the commissioner. Does college football, in the world of Mark Schipper, does college football need a commissioner?
Well, it's one of those ideas that theoretically sounds really good. Let's have a guy at the top center of the sport. Everything can be conducted through him. Rule changes, policy changes, future plans, etc. And it could potentially work, but I think the sport needs to be a lot more unified before they appoint a commissioner over everybody. And that means separating the divisions clearly. Not that they can't interplay, but the top of the sport needs to be separated from the rest of the sport because the money is so different. And then the top of the sport has to be dialed down in terms of the way they compete with each other. And that's the thing about college sports that I think a lot of people don't quite understand is colleges compete over everything. They compete for grant money, for students, for recruits to play on athletic teams, for professors. it's one giant competition. So bringing these schools together to work in harmony over even something like football, to me, it's almost a miracle we get these schools and conferences together, that we can show that much common ground, that they should at least conference up together and share some things and grow the pie, et cetera. So the sport will have to be more unified before a commissioner is effective. Otherwise, all that's going to happen is these guys are all going to bring in their separate notions and complaints and ideas to the commissioner. The commissioner is going to socialize them, and everybody who it doesn't, whose lives it doesn't improve, they're just going to say, "Nah, we don't need that." Next.
Listen, I don't disagree with that at all, folks. He is Mark Schipper, and you've heard him on ESPN, Sirius XM. Just a really talented guy. Glad that we had a chance finally to get him on this program. He's a writer, he's a filmmaker, and of course you can follow him on X or Twitter, whichever way you want to go. 5th Down CFB, 5th Down CFB. Mark, this is great stuff, man. You got to promise me you're going to come back.
Christopher, it was my pleasure. Anytime, my friend.
This is the CGP on News Talk 580, 1059, KMJ.
You're tuned into Autumn.